Presented by MD Abdur-Rahim, Department of Mechanical Engineering, Rajshahi University of Engineering and Technology, RUET, Bangladesh. Shaper machine. The shaper is a reciprocating type of machine tool used for producing small flat surface by removing metal from surfaces in horizontal, vertical and angular planes by the use of a single point cutting tool held on the ram that reciprocates the tool. The shaper is a machine tool used primarily for producing a flat or plane surface, which may be in a horizontal, a vertical, or an angular plane. Making slots, grooves and keyways. Producing contour of concave or convex, or a combination of these. Department of Mechanical Engineering, RUET. Shaper machine terms. Stroke. The size of the shaper is determined by the length of the stroke of the ram. It is same as the largest cube it will machine. The position of the sliding block in the slide determines the length of stroke. The length of the stroke is changed by changing the radius of the circle in which the pin on the ball gear rotates. Feed. The feed is given by the table that moves in the horizontal direction perpendicular to the cutting direction and termed as cross feed. When the table turns with an attachment to give the table an automatic feed across the tool, it is termed as ratchet mechanism. Department of Mechanical Engineering, RUET. Classification of shaper machine. Shapers are mainly crank shapers. A rocker arm, operated by a crank pin from the main driving gear, gives the ram of the crank shaper a back and forth reciprocating motion. Gear shapers are driven by a gear and rack assembly. Gear shapers have a reversible electric motor or mechanical mechanism which quickly returns the ram in readiness for another cut. Hydraulic shapers are driven by movement of a piston in an oil-filled cylinder. Mechanical features on these shapers are the same as those on crank shapers. Depending on whether the ram and the cutting tool reciprocates in the horizontal plane or in the vertical plane, the shapers are classified as horizontal shapers. The cutting ram reciprocates in horizontal direction. 1. Plane shapers. The table cannot rotate or swivel. 2. Universal shapers. The table can be swiveled to left or right and rotated in a full circle. Vertical shapers. The cutting ram reciprocates in vertical direction. Department of Mechanical Engineering, RUET. Classification of shaper. According to the type of mechanism used for giving reciprocating motion to the ram. A. Crank types. Crank mechanism. B. Gear type. Rack and pinion. C. Hydraulic type. Hydraulic power using pressurized oil. According to position and travel of ram. A. Horizontal ram reciprocates horizontally. B. Vertical ram reciprocates vertically. C. Traveling head type. Additional crosswise movement of ram to give required feed. According to the design of table. A. Standard shaper. Horizontal and vertical table movements. B. Universal shaper. Additionally, table can be swiveled about an axis parallel to the ram ways. According to the cutting stroke. A. Push type. Metal removal takes place during pushing of work. B. Draw type. Metal removal takes place during drawing of work. Main parts of a shaper machine. The major components of a shaper are the ram, which has the tool post with cutting tool mounted on its face, and a work table, which holds the part and accomplishes the feed motion. Department of Mechanical Engineering, RUET. Principal parts of shaper. Main parts of a shaper machine. Base. The base is the necessary bed or support required for all machine's tools. All other parts are mounted on and above the base. The bed takes up the total dead weight of the machine as well as the dynamic load during machining operations. Cross rail. The cross rail is mounted on the front of the body frame and can be moved up and down. The vertical movement of the cross rail permits jobs of different heights to be accommodated below the tool. Sliding along the cross rail is a saddle which carries the work table. Column. The column of the shaper is a hollow casting and is mounted on the base. It houses the drive mechanism for the ram and the table. Department of Mechanical Engineering, RUET. Main parts of a shaper machine. Table. The work table of a shaper is fastened to the front of the column. The table moves across the column on cross rails to give the feed motion to the job. Ram. The ram carries the tool head at its front end and travels in guide ways to give straight line reciprocating motion to the tool. The ram is either mechanically driven or hydraulically operated. A single point tool is fastened in the tool post. Tool head. It holds the cutting tool and is fastened to the front of the ram. The tool is held in a tool holder, a tool post similar to the lathe tool post. The tool post and the tool block fit snugly in the clapper box and is hinged at the upper edge. Department of Mechanical Engineering, RUET. Main parts of a shaper machine. Clapper box. The clapper box houses the clapper block, which is connected to it by means of hinge pin. The tool post is mounted upon the clapper block to prevent interference between the tools and workpiece on the return stroke. On the forward cutting stroke, the clapper block fits securely to the clapper box to make a rigid tool on the work. It prevents the tool cutting edge from dragging and wear. The work surface is also prevented from any damage due to dragging. Department of Mechanical Engineering, RUET. Forward and return strokes of ram. Working of a crank-type shaper machine. The shaper changes the rotary motion of the motor to a reciprocating motion at the ram by the following mechanism. The motor gives power to a pulley, which is a small gear called pinion or driving gear. Pinion turns a large bull gear which rotates in a clockwise direction at an uniform rate. A rocker arm pivoted at the base while the other end is connected to the arm of the shaper. Through a link arm, a sliding block fits into a slide in the rocker arm, and a crankpin fits into a hole in the sliding block is attached to the bull gear. The crankpin is positioned in or out radially on the bull gear from an external control to change the length of stroke. As the crankpin on the bull gear revolves, the sliding block is forced to move up and down in the slide. This forces the rocker arm to swing back and forth on the hinge pins in an arc, forcing the ram to reciprocate. Department of Mechanical Engineering, RUET. Working of a crank-type shaper machine. Department of Mechanical Engineering, RUET. Shaper machine. Adjustable stroke, length of ram maximum, and minute distance from table to ram maximum table travel, horizontal and vertical, angular movement of table maximum vertical travel of tool slide maximum swivel of tool slide, no of ram speeds, and range of speeds, range of table feed per stroke of ram, overall dimensions, length, width. Net weight. Power transmission of a shaper, M. 1. The tool move against the work. 2. The work is feed across the tool. 3. The shaper is used for small work. Quick return mechanism. The tool is held in the tool post of the reciprocating ram and perform the cutting operation. During the forward motion of the tool, cutting is performed, while in return stroke tool only slides. In order to reduce the time wasted during the return stroke, shaping machines are fitted with a quick return mechanism to make the return stroke faster. In quick return mechanism, the ram moves forward on the cutting stroke. The driving pin moves through an arc at 220 degrees. On the return stroke, the pin travels through only 140 degrees of arc. Thus the ram travels faster and takes less in return stroke compared to the forward stroke. It may be noted that during the backward stroke of the ram, the tool does not remove material from the work piece. Department of Mechanical Engineering, RUET. Quick return mechanism. Department of Mechanical Engineering, RUET. Quick return mechanism. Department of Mechanical Engineering, RUET. Planer machine. The machine tool for planing is a planer. The planer or planing machine carries the work on a table, fully supported by a heavy bed and D. Capable of sustaining heavy loads. The table slides on ways over the bed. Most planer cuts in one direction, but some in both directions. Cutting speed is achieved by a reciprocating work table that moves the part past the single point cutting tool. Construction and motion capability of a planer permit much larger parts to be machined than on a shaper. Department of Mechanical Engineering, RUET. Planning and shaping. Planning and shaping are similar operations, which differ in the kinematics of the process. Planning is a machining operation in which the primary cutting motion is performed by the workpiece and feed. Motion is imparted to the cutting tool. In shaping, the primary motion is performed by the tool and feed by the workpiece. Department of Mechanical Engineering, RUET. Planning and shaping. Department of Mechanical Engineering, RUET. Planning versus shaping. Shaper. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9. These are light in. Tool reciprocates over a stationary workpiece. Work is usually feed across the tool. Only one tool use. Perfect accuracy is not obtained. Adopted for small work. Used for batch or job shop production. Cost of machine is less. Planer. 1, 2, 3. These are large and heavy in construction. Requires more floor space area. Workpiece reciprocates across the stationary tool. The tool is fed across the stationary workpiece. More than one tool can be used. Maximum accuracy can be obtained. It is adopted for large work. Used for mass production. Cost of machine is high. Department of Mechanical Engineering, RUET.